This is the Washington Times front page for Tuesday, January 11th, 2022. Thanks for joining us. I'm George Gerbo. A nearly 6-hour business-like conversation between American and Russian diplomats in Geneva did little to resolve the military standoff along the Russia-Ukraine border. Ben Wolfgang reports top officials from both nations publicly downplayed the talks and insisted the other side had to make the first move. Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman said after her meeting with Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov that the talks didn't even rise to the level of formal negotiation. Sherman said as a first step to de-escalate the crisis, Russia must pull its troops back from the Ukrainian border. The longer those troops are in place, the greater the chance for war to break out. NATO and the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe will meet with Russian officials later this week. Staying with Russian-related issues, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization said they're prepared to act in Kazakhstan, fueling concerns that China may join Russia in a bid to exploit unrest for its own ends. Bill Gertz and Mike Glenn report the 8-country regional security group, which was formed by China in 2001, vowed to extend assistance to Kazakhstan if there is a corresponding request from Kazakhstan's relevant body. The statement, reported by the official Russian TASS news agency, implies that China could send troops or security forces to Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan is a charter member of the 20-year-old Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Russian President Vladimir Putin was quick to credit his troops with helping restore order and preserve the authoritarian regime in Kazakhstan after a week of unrest from what he described as a terrorist uprising backed by foreign powers. America's bigger businesses are now required to know their employees' COVID-19 vaccination status and should be demanding mandatory mask wearing of those who haven't received the shots after the Biden administration's most expansive vaccine mandate took effect. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration has promised a light touch on enforcement for now, Stephen Dinan reports. Businesses with at least 100 workers, about 2/3 of the private sector workforce, must have a roster of who has received vaccines and who hasn't. Businesses that don't want to enforce a vaccine mandate must have a masking requirement. As of February 9th, they'll also have to test employees weekly for COVID-19 and maintain records of the test results. As long as businesses are making good faith efforts, OSHA says they won't be penalized for another month or so. The Supreme Court is deliberating on whether OSHA's policy is legal and could announce a ruling at any moment. Some businesses say they're caught between an overbearing government and reluctant workers. A reminder that you can find all these stories at WashingtonTimes.com/front page. If you don't have access to the Times yet, you can visit WashingtonTimes.com/George for a special subscription offer. A wave of retirements by House Democrats in solidly blue districts is paving the way for a larger progressive caucus after the midterm elections. So far, 25 House Democrats have announced they won't return next year, Kerry Pickett reports, and 14 of those lawmakers won their seats last cycle by at least a 25-point margin. Democratic candidates in a dozen of those races are backed by liberal or progressive organizations. Progressive Change Campaign Committee spokesperson Caitlin Lang told Kerry the anticipated Republican takeover of the House is an overvalued stock, and the Democrats can rally their base by passing a popular and liberal agenda. Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee spokesperson Chris Taylor noted the overwhelming majority of seats being vacated are in safe Democratic districts. Still, Democratic incumbents are facing a tough election cycle that historically favors the party that doesn't occupy the White House. Republicans need a net pickup of just 5 House seats to win the majority. And finally, charity groups that provide bail have emerged across the country in recent years as part of the backlash against tough-on-crime prosecutors and policies. But Nikki Sterling says the organizations are much too quick to go to bat for defendants accused of dangerous crimes after the shooting death of her son. Emily Zanto reports Sterling learned that the man accused of killing her son, who had intervened on behalf of a drug deal gone bad in Indianapolis, was released on bail. The man was released last year from jail on a $5,650 bond paid in part by a nonprofit dedicated to addressing social and racial inequity. Groups including the California-based Bail Project, the Minnesota Freedom Fund, and the Massachusetts Bail Fund have been criticized for contributing to the revolving door of the criminal justice system. Find all of today's front page stories at WashingtonTimes.com/front page or on the Washington Times app, and find us on your favorite podcast platforms. Just search Washington Times in your favorite podcast app. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Wash Times for breaking news, sports, commentary, and more. For the Washington Times, I'm George Gerbo.